Captain Zareth felt the ship shake beneath her webbed feet. The vibration was wrong, all wrong. In her 40 years of space travel, she had never felt anything like it. The silent current groaned around her like a living thing in pain. "Status report," she called out. Her voice steady despite the fear growing in her chest. Her chief engineer, Mordak, looked up from his console. His silver scales had turned pale with worry. "Captain, the quantum drive is failing. The containment field is collapsing." Zareth's heart stopped for a moment. The quantum drive was their lifeline in deep space. Without it, they were nothing more than a metal shell floating in the void. "Can you repair it?" she asked. Mordak's head fins drooped. "I'm trying, Captain, but the damage is too severe. We need parts we don't have. We need a shipyard." The bridge fell silent except for the humming of life support systems. Zareth looked at the star map on the main screen. They were in the outer rim, far from any known civilization. They had been charting new systems for the Cathani exploration fleet when disaster struck. "How far are we from the nearest station?" she asked her navigator. Navtel worked at her station, her long fingers dancing over the controls. After several minutes, she looked up with grim eyes. 17 light years to the nearest Cathani outpost. 23 to the closest trade station. Without the quantum drive, those distances might as well have been on the other side of the galaxy. Their backup engines could barely push them at sublight speed. At their current capability, it would take them centuries to reach help. "Life support?" Zareth asked her systems officer. 3 weeks at full crew, came the reply. "Maybe 4 if we reduce power to non-essential systems." Zareth closed her eyes and took a deep breath of the recycled air. She had 12 crew members depending on her. 12 souls who had trusted her to bring them home safely. "Send out a distress signal," she ordered. "Maximum power. Broadcast on all frequencies." "Captain," Mordak said quietly, "there's no one out here to hear it." "Then we make sure someone hears it," she replied firmly. "We don't give up." The crew worked through the night, trying everything they could think of. They stripped power from non-essential systems. They tried to jury-rig repairs with spare parts. They even considered using the shuttle's tiny engine to push the main ship, but the math didn't work out. Nothing worked. On the second day, the food recyclers started to malfunction. The water purification system began showing warning signs. The ship was dying around them, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. Young Velana, barely out of the academy, approached Zareth during the third day. The junior engineer's voice shook as she spoke. "Captain, I've been thinking. If we put everyone in hibernation pods except for one person, we could stretch the life support for months." Zareth looked at the young woman with sad eyes. "And who would stay awake to monitor the systems?" "I volunteer, Captain." The offer was brave, but pointless. Even months wouldn't be enough to reach help. It would just be a slower death. "Thank you, Velana," Zareth said gently. "But we stay together." The distress signal continued to broadcast into empty space. The computer sent out their position, their situation, and a plea for help in 17 different languages. The response was always the same. Silence. By the 4th day, some of the crew had begun to talk about their families back home. Others sat quietly, looking out the viewports at the stars. The ship's counselor, Dr. Thilas, moved between crew members, offering what comfort she could. Zareth spent most of her time on the bridge, watching the sensors for any sign of hope. The star charts showed nothing but empty space in every direction. No ships, no stations, no signs of life. They were truly alone. "Captain," her communications officer called out on the 5th day. "I'm detecting some kind of interference on the distress frequency." Zareth's heart raced. "Is it a ship?" I'm not sure. It's very faint. Could be natural phenomena. Keep monitoring it." Hours passed with no change. The interference came and went like static in a storm. Zareth began to think it was just cosmic background noise. Another cruel joke from an uncaring universe. On the 6th day, the main lights failed. Emergency lighting cast red shadows throughout the ship. The temperature started to drop as the heating system struggled with reduced power. "How long now?" Zareth asked Dr. Thelas privately. "Days, maybe a week," the doctor replied. "The cold will get us before the air runs out." Zareth nodded. She had expected as much. She looked around the bridge at her crew. These were good people, dedicated explorers who had volunteered to chart the unknown reaches of space. They deserved better than this. That night, as most of the crew slept in their quarters to conserve heat, Zareth sat alone on the bridge. She watched the stars through the main viewer and thought about her life. She had always dreamed of discovering something new, something wonderful. Instead, she had led her crew to their deaths in empty space. The distress signal continued to broadcast, weaker now as the ship's power faded. Somewhere out there, maybe another ship would find their remains years from now. Maybe they would learn from the silent current's fate. She was about to shut down the signal to save power when something made her pause. The interference was back, stronger this time. It almost sounded like communications. Are you getting this? A comm officer, who had been dozing at his station, jerked awake. He quickly checked his instruments, his eyes going wide. "Captain, that's not interference. That's a signal. Someone is trying to respond to our distress call." Zareth felt a spark of hope ignite in her chest. "Can you clean it up?" "Make contact?" "Working on it, Captain." The bridge suddenly felt warmer, though Zareth knew the temperature hadn't changed. After 6 days of silence, someone had heard their call for help. Someone was out there in the dark, and they were coming. Captain Sarah Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the UE Steadfast Guardian, watching the stars slide past on the main screen. They were deep in uncharted space, carrying classified cargo back to Earth Command. The mission had taken them far from normal shipping lanes, far from any signs of civilization. "Captain," called First Officer Chun from his station. "I'm picking up something strange on the long-range sensors." "Define strange, Mr. Chun." "It's a signal, ma'am." "Repeating pattern. Could be a distress call, but the format is completely unknown." Rodriguez walked over to Chun's station. She had been in space for 15 years, and unknown signals usually meant trouble. "Pirates?" "I don't think so, Captain. The signal is too clean, too organized, and the power output suggests it's coming from a ship in serious trouble." Rodriguez studied the data on Chun's screen. The signal was unlike anything in their databases. The mathematical structure was clearly artificial, clearly intelligent, but it followed no human communication protocol. "How far away?" "Approximately 3 days at maximum burn, Captain." 3 days. Rodriguez thought about their current mission. Earth Command was expecting them back within the week. Their cargo bay held prototype weapons that could change the balance of power in human space. Deviating from course would raise questions. "Ma'am," Chun said quietly, "if this is a distress call, whoever sent it is in serious trouble. The signal is getting weaker." Rodriguez looked around the bridge. Her crew of 43 was watching her, waiting for orders. She thought about the regulations, about their mission priority, about the questions that would come from command. If they deviated from course, then she thought about someone floating alone in the dark, broadcasting a plea for help that no one could understand. "Mr. Park," she called to her navigation officer, "plot a course to the signal source. Maximum burn." "Captain," her tactical officer spoke up, "our orders are to maintain radio silence and proceed directly to Earth." Command was very clear about mission priority. Rodriguez turned to face him. Lieutenant Commander Stevens was a good officer, but he sometimes forgot that regulations serve people, not the other way around. Stevens, when someone sends a distress call, we respond. That's not a regulation. That's who we are. But Captain, we don't even know if these are friendlies. This could be a trap. Then we'll deal with it when we get there. Mr. Park, execute the course change. Aye, Captain. The steadfast Guardian turned toward the unknown signal, its engines burning bright in the darkness. Rodriguez felt the slight vibration through the deck as they accelerated to maximum speed. Chun, keep working on that signal. I want to know everything you can tell me about whoever sent it. Already on it, Captain. The mathematical structure is fascinating. Whoever they are, they're definitely not human, but they're clearly intelligent. The signal contains what looks like position data, power readings, and some kind of status information. Life signs? Unknown, ma'am. But the power readings suggest their ship is in serious trouble. Whatever happened to them, they're running out of time. Rodriguez nodded. How long since they started broadcasting? Based on signal degradation, I'd estimate about 6 days. 6 days. Whoever was out there had been calling for help for nearly a week. Rodriguez couldn't imagine the desperation they must be feeling. Captain, Stevens said again, I have to officially note my objection to this course of action. Our mission parameters are very clear. Noted, Stevens. But I'm not leaving anyone to die in space, human or otherwise. The bridge fell quiet except for the hum of the ship's systems. Rodriguez knew some of her crew had doubts about the decision. She understood their concerns. They were taking a huge risk for unknown aliens who might not even be friendly, but that didn't matter. The signal was a cry for help, and humans answered cries for help. Mr. Chun, any progress on translation? Some, Captain. I'm using the universal mathematical constants in the signal as a starting point. I think I can build a basic communication protocol, but it'll be rough. Do what you can. For 3 days, the steadfast Guardian burned through space at maximum speed. The crew worked around the clock to prepare for whatever they might find. Dr. Harrison studied the alien signal, trying to understand what kind of beings they might be dealing with. Chief Engineer Martinez prepared emergency repair equipment. Security Chief Williams readied his teams for any scenario. On the 3rd day, they finally arrived at the signal source. My God, whispered the helmsman as the alien ship appeared on the main screen. It was unlike anything Rodriguez had ever seen. The hull was curved and flowing, like something that had grown rather than been built. It looked almost organic, covered in what might have been scales or armor plating. But it was clearly in trouble. Parts of the hull were blackened, and she could see atmosphere venting from several breaches. Life signs? She asked. Detecting multiple alien life forms aboard, reported their science officer. Weak but stable. They're alive, Captain, but their ship is dying. How long do they have? At their current rate of system failure, maybe hours. Rodriguez felt a chill run down her spine. They had arrived just in time. Chun, can you raise them? Trying, Captain. Using the basic protocol I developed. A few minutes later, Chun looked up with excitement. Captain, I've got them. The translation is rough, but I think they understand we're here to help. On screen, the main viewer flickered, and suddenly they were looking at an alien face. It was clearly intelligent, with large eyes and what looked like gills on the sides of its neck. The alien was speaking rapidly in a language that sounded like flowing water. What are they saying? Rodriguez asked. Chun listened to his computer's translation attempts. I think they're asking who we are and why we're here. Rodriguez stepped forward. Tell them we're humans. Tell them we received their distress call and we're here to help. Chun worked at his console, transmitting the message. The alien on screen listened, then responded with what sounded like questions. They want to know what we want in return, Chun translated. Rodriguez felt something twist in her stomach. In return? These people were dying, and they were worried about payment? Tell them we don't want anything. We're here because they called for help. The alien's response came quickly, and Chun frowned as he worked on the translation. Captain, they're having trouble understanding. I think the concept of helping without expecting payment is foreign to them. Rodriguez thought about that for a moment. What kind of galaxy was this, where helping someone in distress was such a strange concept? Tell them again. We help because they need help. That's enough. As Chun transmitted the message, Rodriguez looked at the dying alien ship on her screen. Somewhere in that vessel were people who had been calling for help for 6 days. People who were surprised that anyone would answer without expecting something in return. Mr. Martinez, she called to her chief engineer. Prepare the emergency repair teams. We've got a ship to save. Aye, Captain. The steadfast guardian moved closer to the alien vessel, ready to do what humans did best, help those who needed it, no questions asked. Zareth watched through the damaged viewport as the strange ship moved closer to the silent current. The alien vessel was massive, easily twice the size of her exploration ship. Its hull was angular and aggressive-looking, painted in gray and blue. This was clearly a warship. Captain, Mordek said nervously, their weapons are powered down, but they have enough firepower to destroy us 10 times over. They're not here to destroy us, Zareth replied, though she wasn't entirely sure. They answered our distress call. Through the basic translation system they had established, the aliens had said they were here to help. But Zareth had dealt with many species in her career, and she knew that help often came with a price. What did these humans want? What could they possibly gain from helping a stranded Cathani ship? Incoming transmission, reported her communications officer. The main screen flickered, and the alien captain appeared again. The human female looked determined but kind. She spoke in her strange language, and a few seconds later, the translation came through. This is Captain Rodriguez. We're going to begin emergency repairs on your ship. Our teams are preparing to come aboard. Zareth felt a surge of panic. Tell them to wait, she ordered. We need to establish proper protocols. We don't know their biology, their intentions. But even as her communications officer tried to transmit her message, she could see activity around the human ship. Small craft were launching, loaded with equipment. The humans weren't waiting for permission or protocols. They were acting. Captain, Dr. Thillis said quietly, we don't have time for proper protocols. Our life support will fail completely within hours. Zareth knew the doctor was right, but everything about this felt wrong. In her experience, first contact required careful negotiation, extensive planning, cultural exchanges. Yet these humans were treating the situation like a simple emergency rescue. The first human shuttle docked with their airlock 15 minutes later. Zareth and 2 of her senior officers went to greet them. Not knowing what to expect, the airlock cycled, and 3 humans stepped through. They were wearing environmental suits, but Zareth could see their faces through the transparent helmets. They looked remarkably similar to Cathani in basic structure. 2 arms, 2 legs, a central torso, and a head. But their skin was smooth instead of scaled. And they had no gills. The lead human, a middle-aged male with graying hair, held up a device that projected a holographic display. Through their translation system, his voice came through clearly. I'm Chief Engineer Martinez. We're here to fix your ship. Can you show us to your power systems? That was it. No formal introductions, no cultural exchange, no discussion of terms. Just a simple request to begin work. Zareth was so surprised that she simply nodded and led them toward Engineering Dot as they walked through the ship's corridors. Zareth noticed the humans constantly looking around, taking note of everything. But they weren't studying the technology with the calculating eyes of potential thieves or rivals. Instead, they seemed to be assessing what needed to be repaired. In engineering, Martinez looked at the damaged quantum drive and let out a low whistle. Even without translation, Zorath could tell he was impressed by the extent of the damage. "This is bad," he said through the translator. "But we can work with it. My team is bringing over a portable fusion generator. We'll patch your power grid and get your life support stabilized first. What do you require in exchange?" Zareth asked. Martinez looked confused. "Exchange? Lady, your ship is dying. We don't need anything in exchange." Before Zareth could respond, more humans arrived. They moved through the ship with quiet efficiency, setting up equipment and beginning repairs. What struck Zareth most was how they worked together. There was no arguing, no jockeying for position, no concern about who would get credit. They simply worked as a team toward a common goal. "Your hull breaches are the immediate problem," said another human, a woman with short, dark hair. "I'm Lieutenant Commander Park. My team is going to patch them from the outside, but we'll need to coordinate with your people inside to ensure the seals hold." "You're going outside?" Mordek asked in amazement. "In this radiation field? That's extremely dangerous." Park shrugged. "Dangerous, maybe. But your people need air more than we need comfort." Within an hour, humans were swarming over both ships. They worked in the vacuum of space, inside the cramped corridors of the silent current, and in the harsh radiation of the local star. Every time Zareth expected them to stop and negotiate terms or ask for guarantees, they just kept working. Dr. Harrison, the human medical officer, set up a small clinic in the silent current sickbay. When young Velana collapsed from exhaustion and malnutrition, he immediately began treating her, even though he had never seen a Cathani before. "Her blood chemistry is completely different from ours," he explained to Dr. Thillis as he worked. "But the basic principles of medicine are universal. Dehydration is dehydration, whether you have scales or skin. You're risking your life," Dr. Thillis pointed out. "For all you know, our biology could be toxic to you." Dr. Harrison looked up from his patient. "Maybe, but she's dying, and I'm a doctor. The math is simple." By the end of the first day, the humans had stabilized the silent current's life support, patched the major hull breaches, and restored main power. The ship went from a dying hulk to a functioning vessel in less than 24 hours. That evening, Captain Rodriguez came aboard for the first time. She toured the ship with Zareth, inspecting the repairs and checking on the crew. "Your people work miracles?" Zareth said as they stood in the restored engineering section. "They work hard," Rodriguez replied. "But any crew would do the same in this situation, would they?" Zareth asked. "In my experience, Captain, most species require extensive negotiation before rendering aid. Trade agreements, cultural exchanges, guarantees of future cooperation. Yet your people began working immediately, without any discussion of terms." Rodriguez looked puzzled. "Terms? Captain, you were dying. People in trouble get help. That's not complicated. But what do you gain from this?" "Gain?" Rodriguez thought for a moment. "I suppose we gain the knowledge that when you went home to your families, you went home alive." "That's enough." Zareth stared at the human captain. In 40 years of space travel, she had never encountered anything like this. Species helped each other, yes, but always within the framework of treaties and trade agreements. Always with clear benefits and obligations spelled out in advance. These humans helped simply because help was needed. "Captain Rodriguez," Zareth said slowly, "what kind of people are you?" The human smiled, and for the first time since the crisis began, Zareth felt truly safe. "We're the kind of people who answer when someone calls for help," Rodriguez said. "Nothing more complicated than that." As the second day of repairs began, Zareth watched the humans continue their work. They had risked their ship, their mission, and their lives for strangers. They asked for nothing and expected nothing. She was beginning to realize that she had encountered something very rare in the galaxy, a species that helped others, not because it was profitable or strategic, but because it was right. The thought was both wonderful and terrifying. If the humans could help so freely, what else were they capable of? Dr. Thellis had seen many medical emergencies in her career, but she had never seen anything like what happened when Valana collapsed during the power transfer operation. The young Cathani engineer had been working alongside the humans to restore the quantum drive. The work required precise coordination between teams inside and outside the ship. Valana had volunteered to handle the dangerous internal connections. Despite being weakened by days of poor air and little food, when the power surge hit, it threw Valana against a bulkhead with crushing force. Dr. Thellis reached her first, but she immediately knew this was beyond her abilities. The young woman's internal organs were damaged. Her nervous system was shutting down, and she was bleeding internally. "Dead, Dr. Harrison," Thellis called out. Now, the human doctor arrived within minutes, still wearing his environmental suit from working outside. He took one look at Valana and immediately began pulling medical equipment from his bag. "Talk me through her anatomy," he said to Dr. Thellis as he worked. "I need to know what I'm dealing with." "Dr. Harrison, you can't," Thellis protested. "You don't understand our biology. You could kill her." Harrison looked up from his patient, his eyes intense. "Doctor, she's dying anyway." "At least this way, she has a chance." For the next 6 hours, Dr. Harrison performed surgery on an alien patient whose biology he was learning as he went. Dr. Thellis assisted, amazed by the human's quick thinking and adaptability. When his instruments didn't work with Cathani anatomy, he modified them. When standard procedures failed, he invented new ones. "Why are you doing this?" Thellis asked during a brief break. "You're risking everything on a procedure that has never been attempted." Harrison didn't look up from his work. "Because she's 22 years old, and she has her whole life ahead of her. Because her captain is pacing the corridor, worried sick about her. Because she was helping us when this happened." He paused. "Because it's the right thing to do." Captain Zareth spent those 6 hours in the corridor outside the medical bay, watching through the observation window. Chief Engineer Martinez sat beside her, both of them waiting for news. "Your doctor is taking a huge risk," Zareth said. Martinez nodded. "That's just who he is." Last year, he spent 3 days straight treating plague victims on a frontier world. The month before that, he performed emergency surgery on an asteroid miner using tools from a repair kit. He doesn't know how to give up on a patient. But she's not even his species. Doesn't matter to him. Hurt is hurt. Pain is pain. Need is need. Through the window, they could see Dr. Harrison working with steady hands, trying procedures that had never been tested on Cathani physiology. Dr. Thellis moved beside him, offering guidance and assistance. "This is not normal," Zareth said quietly. "What's not normal?" Martinez asked. "This level of effort for a stranger. In my experience, most species provide aid within limits. They help up to a point, then withdraw if the cost becomes too high. Your doctor is risking his reputation, possibly his career, for someone he met 2 days ago." Martinez looked at her with surprise. "Captain, what kind of galaxy do you live in where helping someone in need is considered abnormal?" Before Zareth could answer, Dr. Harrison emerged from the medical bay. His face was exhausted but relieved. "She lived," he announced. "It was touch and go, but she's stable now. She need time to recover, but she should make a full recovery." Zareth felt her legs give out with relief. Martinez caught her arm, steadying her. "Thank you," she whispered to Dr. Harrison. "Thank you for saving her." The human doctor looked confused by her gratitude. "It's my job, Captain." She needed help. Over the next few days, as the repairs continued and Valana recovered, Zareth observed the humans more closely. What she saw challenged everything she thought she knew about how civilized species behaved. When Chief Martinez discovered that the Silent Current's food recyclers were completely destroyed, he immediately arranged for the human ship to share their supplies. When Zareth pointed out that feeding her crew would strain the human ship's resources, Martinez just shrugged. "We can tighten our belts for a few days," he said. "You folks have been starving for a week." When the environmental systems needed recalibration for Kethani physiology, the humans spent hours learning about their biology and making adjustments. When some of Zareth's crew developed breathing problems from the stress and poor air quality, the human medical team worked around the clock to develop treatments. Most surprising of all was what happened when the repairs were nearly complete. Captain Rodriguez pulled Zareth aside for a private conversation. "Captain, we've run diagnostics on your ship," Rodriguez said. "The quantum drive will get you home, but it's operating at maybe 60% efficiency. You'll be slow, and you'll be vulnerable if you run into any problems." Zareth nodded. She had expected as much. The humans had saved their lives, but they couldn't work miracles with damaged equipment. "However," Rodriguez continued, "we have quantum drive components in our cargo bay that would bring your drive up to full efficiency. I'd like to transfer them to your ship." Zareth stared at her. "Captain, those components must be extremely valuable. What do you want in exchange?" "Nothing." "Nothing? But surely, Captain Zareth, you're going to be traveling through dangerous space. You need every advantage you can get. We have spare parts, and you need them. The math is simple. But your superiors, your government, won't they be angry that you gave away valuable equipment?" Rodriguez smiled. "I'll tell them we met some good people who needed help getting home. Trust me, they'll understand." That evening, as the final preparations were made for departure, Zareth found herself in the Silent Current's observation lounge with several of her crew. They watched the humans working on their ship's exterior, making final adjustments and checks. "I don't understand them," said Navtel. "They've given us food, medical treatment, spare parts, the days of their time. They've risked their lives and their mission. For what?" "For nothing," replied Dr. Thelis. "That's what makes them so remarkable. They help because helping is what they do." Mordak shook his head. "It doesn't make sense from a strategic standpoint. They've gained nothing from this encounter except delays and depleted resources." "Maybe that's the point," Zareth said thoughtfully. "Maybe they don't think in terms of strategic advantage when people are in trouble. Maybe they just think in terms of right and wrong." Young Velana, still pale but recovering, spoke up from her chair. "Dr. Harrison told me something when I thanked him for saving my life. He said that in human philosophy, the value of a life isn't measured by what that person can give back. He said every life is worth simply because it exists." The observation lounge fell quiet as the crew absorbed this concept. In Kethani society, as in most galactic civilizations, value was measured by contribution. People were important because of what they could do, what they could provide, what they could achieve. But the humans seemed to believe that people were important simply because they were people. What kind of society produces beings like this? Dr. Thelis asked. Zareth looked out at the human ship, where she could see crew members still working to ensure their safe journey home. "I don't know," she said, "but I intend to find out." The next morning, the two ships prepared to part ways. Captain Rodriguez contacted the Silent Current one final time. "Safe journey home, Captain Zareth," she said through the translator. "It was an honor to meet you and your crew." "The honor was ours, Captain Rodriguez." "What you've done for us, we will not forget. Just remember to answer the call when someone else needs help," Rodriguez replied. That's all the thanks we need. As the human ship disappeared into quantum space, continuing on their original mission, Zareth realized that everything had changed. She had encountered a species that redefined what it meant to be civilized. What it meant to be truly advanced, that the humans had shown her that the highest technology was compassion, and the greatest strength was the willingness to help others without counting the cost. 3 months after the rescue, Captain Zareth stood before the Cathani High Council on their homeworld of Keltara. The massive chamber was filled with the most important leaders of her species, their silver scales gleaming under the ceremonial lights. She had been summoned to give a formal report on her encounter with the humans. Captain Zareth, spoke Elder Morkath, the eldest member of the council. Your initial report was unusual. Please elaborate on these humans and their motivations. Zareth took a deep breath. She had known this moment would come, but she was still unsure how to explain what she had experienced. Honored elders, the humans rescued us without any expectation of reward. They risked their ship, their mission, and their lives for complete strangers. When I asked what they wanted in return, they seemed confused by the question. Confused? Elder Velmuth asked. Surely they had some agenda. Territory rights? Technology exchange? Future trade agreements? None, Elder. They helped because we needed help. That was their only motivation. A murmur ran through the chamber. Several council members exchanged skeptical glances. Captain, Elder Morkath said carefully, are you suggesting these humans are so primitive that they don't understand the concept of mutual benefit? No, Elder. I'm suggesting they are so advanced that they've moved beyond it. The chamber fell silent. Zareth could see doubt and disbelief on the faces of the council members. Explain, Elder Morkath demanded. Zareth told them everything. She described Dr. Harrison's 6-hour surgery on Valana, performed with no guarantee of success. She told him about Chief Martinez sharing the humans' food supplies when their own recyclers failed. She explained how Captain Rodriguez gave them valuable quantum drive components for nothing. They have a phrase, Zareth said. Dr. Harrison told it to young Valana. They say that the value of a life is not measured by what that person can give back, but simply by the fact that it exists. They believe every life has inherent worth. Elder Velmuth shook her head. That is an inefficient philosophy. A society cannot function if resources are distributed without regard to contribution. And yet their society does function. Elder, their ship was advanced, their crew was disciplined and skilled, and their technology was impressive. They are not primitive or weak. They are simply different. The debate continued for hours. Some council members argued that the humans must have had hidden motives. Others suggested they were dangerously naive and would be easily exploited by more aggressive species. A few wondered if they might be a useful ally. Finally, Elder Morkath called for order. Captain Zarad, what is your recommendation regarding future contact with these humans? Zarath had been preparing for this question for months. Honored elders, I believe we should establish formal diplomatic relations with humanity. But more than that, I believe we should study their philosophy. They have something we've lost along our path to civilization. And what is that? The understanding that some things are more important than profit. The council voted to authorize further contact with humanity, though the decision was far from unanimous. But Zarath's real work was just beginning. Over the following months, the story of the human rescue spread throughout Cathani space. At first, many dismissed it as an exaggeration or misunderstanding. But as more details emerged, and as Valana and the other survivors confirmed every aspect of Zarth's account, people began to take notice. The story reached other species through the normal channels of galactic communication. Traders carried the tale to distant worlds. Diplomats discussed it in official meetings. Scientists debated its implications. The reaction was mixed. The Viakari, a species known for their aggressive expansion policies, dismissed the humans as weak and naive. The Zarethian Empire saw them as potential threats who might interfere with their slave trading operations. But others were intrigued. The Veltar, a peaceful species that had long been bullied by their neighbors, sent a formal request to the Cathani for more information about humanity. The scholarly Enith began researching human philosophy and psychology. Even the pragmatic Gornish started to reconsider their assumptions about interstellar relations. 6 months after the rescue, a remarkable event occurred. A Zarethian slave ship suffered a catastrophic engine failure in the Kepler sector. The ship sent out a distress call, not expecting any response since they were in disputed territory. 3 ships responded to the call. 2 were human vessels. The rescue that followed was recorded by the 3rd ship, a Gornish trader who happened to be passing through the system. The footage spread throughout the galaxy within days. The humans didn't ask about the Zarethian ship's cargo. They didn't inquire about politics or territorial claims. They simply saw beings in distress and responded. When they discovered the enslaved creatures in the ship's hold, they immediately began providing medical treatment and supplies. The Zarethian captain tried to explain that the beings in the hold were his property, not victims. The human captain's response became legendary. "I don't care what your laws say. No one owns another person." The humans escorted the Zarethian ship to the nearest neutral station, but not before ensuring the enslaved beings were freed and given passage to worlds of their choosing. They provided them with funds, medical treatment, and counseling. The incident sparked a galaxy-wide debate about human intervention in other species' affairs. Some called them dangerous idealists who threatened the established order. Others began to wonder if the established order needed to be threatened. More incidents followed. A human medical ship entered a plague zone that other species had quarantined, providing treatment to millions of dying civilians. Human rescue teams responded to natural disasters on worlds they had never visited before. Human merchant ships began refusing to carry slaves, even when it meant losing profitable contracts. Each incident reinforced the same pattern. Humans helped because helping was right, not because it was profitable or strategic. The galactic community struggled to understand this behavior. Some species tried to exploit it, creating false emergencies to see if humans would respond. They always did. Others tried to manipulate human compassion for their own ends. Sometimes they succeeded, but the humans seemed to learn from these experiences without becoming cynical. 1 year after Zarath's rescue, the Galactic Council called a special session to address what they termed the human question. Representatives from 47 species gathered to discuss how to deal with this new factor in galactic politics. Captain Zarath was invited to speak as an expert witness. She stood before the massive assembly, feeling small among the diverse alien forms around her. "Honored representatives," she began, "you asked me to explain the humans to you. I can tell you what they do, but I cannot fully explain why they do it. What I can tell you is that they have shown us something important about ourselves." She paused, looking around the chamber. "We call ourselves civilized. We have great cities, advanced technology, complex political systems. But we have forgotten the simple truth that the humans remember. We are all connected. When one suffers, we all suffer. When one is saved, we all benefit. The humans are not naive or weak. They are not trying to conquer us or convert us. They simply refuse to ignore suffering when they have the power to stop it. They help because helping is what intelligent beings should do for each other." The debate that followed lasted for days. In the end, the Council passed a resolution acknowledging humanity as a full member of the galactic community, despite their relatively recent arrival on the interstellar stage. But more importantly, The resolution included something unprecedented, a formal recognition of the principle that all intelligent life has inherent value, regardless of species, technology level, or political system. It was a small step, but it was a beginning. Captain Zareth returned to her ship with a new mission. The Kithani had appointed her as their first ambassador to humanity. Her job was to learn from these remarkable beings and to help build bridges between their species. As her ship entered quantum space, heading toward Earth, Zareth thought about the chain of events that had started with a simple distress call. She had been lost in space, facing death in the cold void. The humans had answered her call without hesitation, and in doing so, they had changed not just her fate, but the fate of the entire galaxy. In the depths of space, word was spreading about the species that always answered distress calls. Pirates and slavers began to avoid systems where human ships might be present. Peaceful species started to hope that maybe the galaxy could be a kinder place. And somewhere out there, Captain Sarah Rodriguez and the crew of the Steadfast Guardian continued their patrol, ready to answer the next call for help that came through the darkness, because that's what humans did. They answered when someone called for help. No questions asked, no payment required. And slowly, one rescue at a time, they were teaching the galaxy what it truly meant to be civilized.